Okay. Uh, what was that? Good morning, Aparna. Thank you. Uh, so please remember that what we are doing is illegal. We are not supposed to take online classes. But since the hostels are not open and people haven't come, we will do this online thing. Otherwise, what will happen is suddenly they'll announce the dates of exams and we'll be somewhere behind. Uh, so thank you for cooperating with me. It's very kind of you. Now, we were doing, if you remember, we were talking about um, the various influences on Plato, and we had reached this particular stage where we are talking now about uh, Parmenides. Okay, Parmenides' influence is a bit of a convoluted kind of an influence. It's not something that is straightforward. Um and it's convoluted because Plato takes only parts of Parmenides' idea. Now, Parmenides, if you just let's quickly go through that again. Parmenides believed that all movement is illusory. Okay, he says nothing in the world moves. So I told you that he had an ongoing argument with Heraclitus. Heraclitus basically claimed that you don't step into the same river twice. And Parmenides didn't agree with him. He said, if this is not the same river, then what is it? Okay. Has it moved away? Has it gone off and disappeared? So, what he's basically trying to establish is that knowledge is not something that you gain through the study of phenomena. What he's essentially talking about is that knowledge is gained by exercising the mental faculty. The more you exercise the mental faculty, the greater the way of greater the possibilities of understanding the world. Okay, Parmenides actually didn't write a lot. He wrote a work called Poem, Poem. It's not poem in the traditional sense of the term that we use now. His idea of the poem is something that comes from the Greek idea of a presentation of the Greek concept of the presentation of an idea. Uh, Zeno tried to protect this particular document from being lost, but get, it didn't, the whole document was not lost, but some of the parts of it were lost. So what you see in the form of the poem is bits and pieces, but that is okay, because there have been other documentations in terms of history. There have been other documentations which tell us uh, quite a great deal about Parmenides. Now, let's try to understand what is it that Parmenides is talking about. I'm extremely sorry about this. Um, what is it that Parmenides is basically talking about when he uh, says, when he talks about knowledge? Okay. Um, what exactly is he talking about when he talks about knowledge? Now, Parmenides spoke in riddles, if I may say so. Uh, this is not something that everybody says. I am saying that. Uh, he has this way of putting things which are somehow a bit confusing. Uh, for instance, if you look at uh, one of the pithy short sayings of his, he says, whatever is, is. Whatever is not, cannot be. Now, this is a loaded statement that he made, but he made it in one line. Whatever uh, is, uh, it is, but whatever is not, cannot be. Now, if you look at the uh, implications of this particular statement, what he's trying to say is that the world is there and it is for people to try and understand it. And that is where we talk about the mental angle. By mental, I don't mean somebody who's gone crazy. Mental as in that which pertains to the mind. So he was somebody who, if I may use a popular modern idiom, it is mind over matter. For him, matter held no significance of any kind. It just did not hold any significance of any kind. And so what we see is that Parmenides is focusing upon the mind. For him, everything comes from the mind. Now, if you want to understand this a little better, then you should look at this one particular argument that he has. he says that the world, when it is not moving, is the real world. The world which is not moving is the real world. Uh, that he puts it as the, what he calls the argument of truth. Truth written with a capital T. So he is basically making this particular, uh, what should I say? He's making this particular statement uh, that if you want to understand the world, then you have to look at it as the world as a truth, which is what I had told you. I had given you this example from Buddha. Buddha says what drives the world is dukkha. So it is an emotion, right? And so you see, Parmenides is a bit like the Buddha. Uh, he is talking about emotions. Okay, and I want you to please remember this point, because this is the point that uh, becomes significant to us when we try to understand the influences on Plato. So he talks about the world of truth with a capital T, and he talks about the world of appearances. So appearances should be understood as phenomena, things that occur, that which we see. So for him, the world of appearances, or the perspective of appearances, is misleading, misguiding, and leaving people with wrong perceptions about the world and with no knowledge at all. That is what he says when he talks about uh, the world of appearances uh, being deceitful. He actually says that it deceives people into believing false things. It doesn't actually give the right picture. So if you look at it, Parmenides is critical of the Milesians, though there is no documented evidence except from a redacted text where the focus of the Milesians was on matter. Uh, the argument that you find in Parmenides is the exact opposite of that. Parmenides is basically saying that if you look at the world of appearances, then you're not going to have knowledge. So you have to understand the truth. The truth is that which saves people from getting into uh, a misunderstanding of the world. The truth is that which gives people a reasonable and sufficient idea about the nature of the world and the nature of life. So, in that sense, you can see that there is a bit of a repudiation of the Milesian way of doing things. The Milesians focused on matter. So, what we see from this is that uh, there is some kind of what should I say? There is some kind of a uh, repudiation only of the Milesian school. Now, Parmenides, when he talks about the world of appearances and trying to gain knowledge about appearances being a futile exercise, what we are seeing is the fact that Parmenides is basically emphasizing on mentation, mentation as in thought, okay? Or if you like, you can use ratiocination. But a better word would be uh, mentation, because he's asking people to rely on their mind. And when you do that, you see that the world doesn't move. He has this idea that the world is a whole, not H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E. The world is a whole. And when something is a whole, it's a completeness. And anything that is complete, why does it need to move? That is what is the that is basically the argument that we are seeing in uh, Parmenides. Parmenides is basically trying to make this whole argument wherein he is emphasizing that if the world is a whole, where is the necessity for movement? So, therefore, he says the world doesn't move. The perception that the world or things in the world move is illusory, which is unreal. And for him, if you concentrate on the world as things and not as a whole, then you have a tendency to go into appearances. And when you go into appearances, what happens is that uh, basically end up uh, you basically end up with the wrong kind of understanding. So, like I said, the 2 points that you must remember about Parmenides is the world being a whole, and the other idea that you should look at is that for him, the world of things and appearances is not the real world. The real world is something that exists in your mind, mentation, understanding. This, please keep in your mind, because this is one of the arguments that, this is one of the very big influences on Plato. Okay, so if you therefore look at Parmenides, he is sometimes, the reason why I use the word convoluted is sometimes it seems like there is a direct, absolutely direct uh, uh, influence of Parmenides on Plato. Sometimes it seems as if it is an indirect influence, not an influence, but an inspiration for Plato to take up, uh, his enterprise of trying to understand the world. Even though the influence may not be very big, it is extremely significant. It is extremely significant because it is with the Asiatic school and with uh, what should I say, with Parmenides and Zeno, that you have the seeds of Plato's philosophy being sown. So this is one of the influences that you must remember. Now, an even more convoluted influence that existed on uh, Plato is that of Protagoras. Protagoras was someone uh, who was like the sophist, about whom I shall talk about later. But Protagoras is somebody who made a very indirect influence on Plato. It seems like an insignificant influence, but nevertheless, it is a very, very significant influence. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this term, Gnosticism, Gnosticism, Gnosticism. Now, Gnosticism is the modern English pronunciation. The Greeks basically talked about Gnosticism. They pronounced it as Gnosticism, Gnosticism, Gnosticism. A bit of a tongue twister, but that's how they pronounced it. The Romans couldn't be bothered with the phonetics of the Greek language, so they said Gnosticism, Gnosticism. And when it came to English, especially in the modern period, you don't pronounce the G that precedes an N. If you write Gnarl, you don't say gnal, you say nal. So similarly, people say Gnosticism. And Gnosticism was propagated by Protagoras. He's probably the earliest. There might have been others, but I am not aware of them. He seems to me to be the first person to take recourse to Gnosticism. So what is Gnosticism? Gnosticism is something that is set firmly in the ancient Greek civilization. And what Gnosticism did, or what the Gnosticists did, was to reject the whole idea of the pantheon of gods that the Greeks had. The Greeks had a head god, Zeus. I told you Zeus. It is not pronounced Zeus. It is Zeus. Zeus is the head god. He has two sons. Apollo. Apollo signifies order, dignity. And then you have the black sheep of the family of Zeus, whose name is Dionysius. Dionysius was somebody, the Romans call him Bacchus. Dionysius was somebody who was unruly, and he did not believe in the idea of his brother that order is what brings knowledge. He basically said you have to explore the world, and the exploration process for him included a great deal of wine drinking. And in fact, that is the reason why the Romans called Dionysius, they, like I said, they call him Bacchus. They called him the god of wine. Now, so Dionysius, and he had a big following. They believed that you have to be disorderly. Only when you are disorderly will you ultimately find out what order is. Okay, you don't start with the idea that we have order. Then you don't know anything about yourself. So the Gnostics basically didn't really accept the pantheon of Greek gods. They probably gave a little bit of a respect for Dionysius because of the fact that he believed that order comes out of disorder. So the Gnosticists, like Protagoras, they believed, or let's talk about Protagoras. Why should we talk about they? Protagoras believed that this whole God thing was complete nonsense for him. He did not believe in anthropomorphic gods. Anthropomorphic, I don't know if I've explained it to you before. What does anthropomorphic mean? It comes from anthrop, ANTHROPE, anthrop, and an anthrop is nothing but a human being. Okay, and when you say somebody is anthropomorphic, the argument that you're putting forward is that these people have the external characters of a human being. They look like human beings. Please look at the pictures of the Greek gods. You'll find that they had beards. They sometimes probably didn't comb their hair also. So all these things were happening. And you have this rejection of the Greek pantheon of gods by Protagoras and the other Gnostics. Protagoras, this I want you to again keep it in your mind. We will be coming to this. Protagoras replaced this pantheon of gods with a lesser god. A lesser god in the sense that somebody who, if you look at the whole Greek gods thing, They were supposed to get angry. You had to sacrifice things to them and all that. And that was all not palatable to Protagoras. Protagoras talked about a lesser god, demiurge, Demiurge. This I want you to remember, because demiurge makes an appearance in the philosophy of Plato. So, what you have to see, therefore, is that all these are highly eclectic influences. They are eclectic influences in the sense that they are eclectic influences in the sense that they come from different sources. The source is not one source. They come from different sources. So eclecticism is what you find in Plato's construction of his own philosophy. He even borrowed or validated ideas of those with whom he didn't really have a great deal of, what should I say, uh, a great deal of rapport. Uh, but nevertheless, some of them are actually antithetical to him. But despite that, if he found an element which would enrich his understanding and which would enrich the understanding of uh, the world, then Plato was not shy to take particular ideas, not the entire philosophy of someone. He would take some small particular ideas and apply them to his own philosophy. So you see that there are all these myriad influences. The other thing that you need to know is that the next big influence on Plato is mathematics and Pythagoras. That is again very, very integral to Plato's philosophy, especially when you see that he's especially uh, when you see his Republic, it becomes a lot more clearer. So the influence of Pythagoras we will talk about tomorrow. I'll stop here today. I just need to make one point with you. Uh, please don't talk about this openly. Let me stop recording this. 1 second, please.